Ranker Collins. Chairman Lieberman, I was going to do our Jack Many routine.
It's a great one.
Thinking that perhaps it would add a little levity to this subject, but there are 4 regulations that prohibit that in the committee room. Wasn't aware of that until this morning, and I had the full stack of regulations here, but it kept leaning over like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and I didn't want to have a problem. I could say, now, Joe, cut that out, but I won't do that.
Thank you.
All right. And distinguished members of the committee, I'm pleased to be here today to testify on the regulatory reform issues, obviously the topic of the day, Senator Warner's bill, Senator Vitter's bill. I'm a co-sponsor of Senator Collins' bill and Senator Snow's bill. I have 47 co-sponsors on this bill. Mark, we need your help. I'll visit with you. I built a regulatory responsibility for our Economy Act of 2011 would strengthen and codify President Obama's executive order from January 18. The President made a commitment to review, modify, streamline, expand, or repeal those significant regulatory actions that are duplicative, unnecessary, overly burdensome, or would have significant economic impacts. Well, my bill would ensure just that, and would require that all regulations put forth by the current and future administrations consider the economic burden on American businesses, ensure stakeholder input during the regulatory process, and promote innovation. My legislation would ensure that this happens by laying out specific conditions that the federal regulatory system must meet. It also puts forth new and codifies existing agency requirements for promulgating the regulations. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed, the President stated, and I'm quoting, "We have preserved freedom of commerce while applying those rules and regulations necessary to protect the public against threats to our health, safety, and to safeguard people and businesses from abuse." But he also noted, sometimes those rules have gotten out of balance, placing unreasonable burdens on business, burdens that have stifled innovation and have had a chilling effect on growth and jobs. I absolutely agree with that statement. I hear Kansan after Kansan who find themselves weighed down by the deluge of regulations that threaten the future of their businesses. During fiscal year 2010, 43 new major regulations were adopted with an estimated net new burden on Americans exceeding $26.5 billion each year. Now, that's a record increase. 15 of the 43 new major rules involve financial regulation. Another 5 stem from health care reform. 10 rules adopted by the EPA were responsible for the lion's share of the new regulatory costs, some $23.2 billion. Regulatory burdens and the taxpayer burden are expected to increase again this year as agencies continue to promulgate literally thousands of new rules. A September 2010 report prepared for the Small Business Administration stated that the annual cost of federal regulations, the annual cost total, was an outstanding $1.75 trillion in 2008. Now, imagine the cost since then. My legislation would simply codify the President's executive order and assure a review of these regulations. The President's executive order, quote, requires that federal agencies ensure that regulations protect our safety, health, and environment while promoting economic growth. So does my legislation. However, it strengthens the President's commitment by promoting economic growth, innovation, and competitiveness and job creation. The President's executive order commissions a government-wide review to remove outdated regulations that stifle job creation and make our economy less competitive. So does my legislation. My legislation requires each agency to submit a plan to review existing significant regulatory actions, and then they must continue to do so once every 5 years and must report to the Congress. We need to add some teeth to the President's commitment by closing existing loopholes. My legislation also requires the independent agencies to complete a review of their regulatory action and imposes the same requirements on them. I'm sure every office in the Congress, everybody here, hears about the egregious overregulation by independent agencies such as the CFTC and the EPA. My bill also ensures valuable stakeholder input on regulatory actions, including standardizing the length of the comment period and when it should start. Today's comment periods can range from 2 weeks to 90 days, causing inconsistency, and stakeholders should have the time and a say in protecting their future. In 2010, federal agencies issued 3,573 final rules. The administration's own cost estimates for the 280 proposed or enacted regulations this year is over $29.4 billion, almost $30 billion, with potentially even broader economic costs on our economy. And this is just a snapshot in time, with hundreds of pages, more and more, that are coming out every day. President Obama has made it his mission. This is a quote, "A mission to root out regulations that conflict and that are not worth the cost or are just plain dumb." I agree. We need to eliminate more of the just plain dumb in government and would encourage the administration and my colleagues to support my legislation. I thank the chairman and the ranking member.
Thanks, Senator Roberts. It's very heartening to hear the ways in which you and President Obama are of like mind.
He has a blueprint, sir, and I simply codify his rules and take out the exemptions. If you would like, I could read one particular exemption that I think rather, or loophole, is very egregious.
I knew I shouldn't have commented.
Let me just say that
Go right ahead.
In applying these principles, this is for each agency head and for Cass over here to take a look at it. Each agency is directed to use the best available techniques to quantify anticipated and present future benefits as cost as accurately possible. Well, that's pretty good. But where appropriate and permitted by law, each agency may consider and discuss qualitatively now, Mr. Chairman, values that are difficult or impossible to quantify, including equity, human dignity, fairness, and distributive impacts. Now, I defy anybody here to really define what that means. And Cass, if you can define it, bless your heart. And many agency heads simply got their people together and said at the initial speech by the President back in January 18 when he issued the executive order and said, well, are we doing equity? Are we doing human dignity? Are we doing fairness? Are we doing distributive impacts? And everybody said, well, sure. And so the EPA came out and said, well, you know, none of this applies to us. Now, they've changed their mind a little bit after they've testified before Congress and after the President's order has been fully discussed. I give the President great credit. Our bill simply uses his as a blueprint to, I think, improve it some and put teeth in it. And I appreciate your indulgence.
Thanks, Senator Roberts. When Mr. Sunstein is before us, I'll ask him to respond on that particular